Three, two, one.
I got my life back.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to Hanging Out with Successful Bar Exam Takers. And today we've got a fun story, a great guy that I got to know over the last year. His name is Nicholas Sarta. He's a new member of the Florida Bar. Hey, Nick, how are you?
Hey, Jackson. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. I imagine you probably like talking to me better now than during the course, right?
Absolutely.
Now, you were at our boot camp that we did. And of course, as we're recording today, I'm getting ready for the next boot camp in just a couple of days. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But that was an experience, wasn't it?
Yep, it was. I saw a lot of people registering for it on the Facebook page. And I highly recommend it. I think that's their best option right now.
Great. Well, good. Well, we'll circle back around and talk a little bit about that. Now, you're licensed already in New York, and I love it if you would just tell our audience a little bit about your background, how you came to be in New York, and then what made you decide to sit for the Florida bar exam.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in New York. I'm in Brooklyn. Been here my whole life. I'm 35 now, so that puts me at 35 years here. I got barred in New Jersey 2011. I was barred in New York 2012, and I was working with a firm that I know here locally. And then a few years later, I spun off and I opened my own firm with a friend of mine, a buddy of mine who was a year behind me in school. So I was waiting for him to come out, but that was the plan all along. And we do personal injury litigation mostly. We do a little bit of real estate transactional work. But we've been rocking and rolling for 7 years. Now, my entire family was here in New York. However, my parents have just moved to Fort Lauderdale about a year ago. My brother is now moving to Fort Lauderdale this summer. And I don't know, I feel like it's time for a change. New York is different now. It's not what it was. Tired of the traffic and the rat race that it is here. But not to say that South Florida is not now burdened with traffic as well, because I noticed the last few times I went. But I've always had an inkling that I wanted to wind up in Florida, and family and friends there. So I think it's a good fit for me.
Yeah. And, I remember you telling me that it was not easy for you to get barred in New York. It was you had to really work hard at getting through the bar exam there, right?
Yeah. When I took it, it wasn't the MBE. Not to say that the MBE is any easier, but my personal experience with it was I had to take the New York bar twice. That's why in New Jersey I was barred a year earlier than I was in New York.
Right.
So I went to work once I got my Jersey license at a New York firm, but you're limited in what you can do. So then I had to trek on and finally pass the New York bar. And the first time I had failed you needed 665 out of 1,000 at that time to pass. And they sent me my score. It was a whopping 660. So I missed by 0.5% of a point.
Yeah.
It's pretty upsetting.
Yeah. And did that impact your thinking about taking the Florida bar exam at all?
Of course, there was that anxiety. I was nervous. Especially now, I was much more busy. I mean, I studied for the New York and New Jersey bars fresh out of school. So for one, I was already accustomed to studying and doing nothing but, although I had part-time jobs, but my focus was on the studies. The Florida bar I was anxious and nervous about because I'm running a law firm, I have family and stuff to do, and it's just a different day. It had only been 7.5 years, but it was very different. At first it was tough to get back in the grind to study.
Yeah, and you came to us, and I remember talking to you before you signed up, and you said, look, I only want to do this once, and I'm prepared to do what I've got to do, but I've got a busy life, and you didn't tell me about the dog back then, but you've got a crazy dog, and or at least you dress the dog like a crazy dog.
Not me, my girlfriend does.
Okay, fine. So anyway, but you had a lot going on, and you told me about your practice and the things that were happening. But then you said something I thought that was really important. You said, you know what, I'll do what you asked me to do. I'll follow your direction, and I'll do what I have to do in order to pass. You remember that conversation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do.
And so you got into our course, and you purchased our basic coaching course and then added some mentoring time as you went along, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And in those mentoring calls, you and I were talking about your writing and your studies in general. How many hours a week would you say you studied for the Florida bar during the time of your preparation?
Well, for the February bar, I took it in February. So I believe I signed up for the course in October.
Mhm.
So it was kind of early. I was, I think, one of the earlier ones. And I started right away, but I was not making that much progress. At that point, I was maybe putting an hour a day in, just looking over, trying to get a gauge of what the material was and really what the structure of the course was. But you know, then I went picking it up. I mean, I basically followed what you guys told us to in the group coaching, in the webinars on Fridays. You know, you guys were great to tell us right now you should be doing 10 hours a week. Right now you should be 20 hours a week. I pretty much stuck to it. You know, in addition, I did paraliminals and everything else. I didn't include that in the time, but as far as study time is concerned, I'd say on average about 20 hours a week. And
Okay.
even at the end, I didn't really pick up the pace much because I didn't want to overdo it. And you guys were
Right.
also,
Well, you also got sick, didn't you?
oh, I was sick for a couple of weeks, and a couple of scares with doctors and
Yeah.
diagnostic tests and whatever. Couldn't figure out what was going on, but it was really putting a drain on me. And whatever it was causing me, you know, as having a hard time sleeping and a hard time even waking up. I felt pretty fatigued. And at that point, I thought to myself, I'm halfway there through the course, and what bad luck that now I'm, you know, feeling like this a few days a week. But I stuck it out, you know, and some days if I had to do a few hours less, I picked it up on the following day, you know, a couple hours more.
Yeah, I think you're really you're a very determined guy and a very focused guy, and I knew that you were going to just power your way through it. I mean, I remember we talked a little bit, and you were like, "Oh my God, I feel like I'm, you know, half dead here, but I'm going to keep going. I'm going to show up and just keep showing up." And I think that, you know, part of success is just showing up. It's just being there and doing the work. And because you'd started earlier, you had a good base built in. So you started in October, and then in November, at the end of November and the beginning of December, we offered a 2.5-day live training session in Florida. We called it Photo Reading Bootcamp,
Yep.
and you had decided to go ahead and add photo reading to your course. And I think that you were legitimately skeptical that this would work and how it would work. And you came for the session and the boot camp. Why don't you talk a little bit about photo reading and what that felt like to you at the beginning, and then ultimately what it meant for you as a bar taker?
Yeah, so when I first signed up for it, and we do that introductory, I don't remember if it was 7 or 8 courses, an hour a day. You know, honestly, to be frank, I thought to myself, this is hogwash. I can't believe I even bothered with this. I'm going to go back to the regular study, which was reading word for word the things. But I told myself I'm going to trust in what Jackson's saying. You know, their numbers speak for themselves. And if it works for others, it should work for me. I stuck with it. And really what wrapped everything up for me for photo reading was once I went to boot camp. Because before boot camp, I was still a bit at a loss about what it was, you know, how to go about it or what it was about. And then after the 2.5 days at boot camp, I'm sure we'll do that in a separate section. I don't know, but it ties together with boot camp. But photo reading really came to life for me at boot camp, and it made sense to me. And you know, along with the mind mapping and the questions, practice questions. But it saved me a ton of time, the photo reading. And after a few subjects, or the first 2 subjects that I was photo reading, I realized that I was actually retaining the information, if not the same, even better than when I was bored to death reading, you know, word for word out of the books, and it was only taking me a fraction of the time. And I was able to put my efforts into practice questions and mind mapping, where I think, and the video lectures that we had watched. And I thought that, you know, realizing now that the photo reading is a good time saver, and also it's effective, you know. And for me, it was easy when I had, you know, in between work, you know, come back from the courthouse, before I make my phone call, sit down to have some lunch. I'd be eating lunch, and I have the book to my left and my sandwich to the right, and just flipping through the pages. You know, it's what's nice about photo reading is that any block of the day where I had 10 or 15 minutes, I could fit it in, you know?
Yeah.
So whereas if I had to sit and read a chapter, unless I had 2 hours to set aside, which is rare for me to set aside a full 2 hours, I wouldn't even start doing it because I knew I wasn't going to complete. So
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. Yeah. Yeah. You can read a whole outline in 15 minutes. So how many times do you think you read a subject outline in your study?
Oof, I don't know. Each subject would have to be, you know, over 20 times, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah.
probably more. And it gradually got more and more. I put more trust and more weight on the photo reading in the second half of my studies. So, and what was nice about the photo reading is that in the last few weeks up until the exam, I was done with all my mind maps. And I said, great, I don't have to open a book and read anything. I just have to look. I have to look and photo read, and I have to look at the mind maps. And basically that's what it was for me. And believe it or not, I know you guys are talking about things jumping out on the page at you and stuff like that. That didn't really happen to me per se in the sense of a visual jumping out at me, but I did notice that during the exam, when there were certain topics on the essays or even multiple choice questions, I could see a flashback in my mind to where that was in the photo reading, at least, you know, where it was on the page, the bolded headings and stuff like that. That really sticks in your brain, I feel.
Yeah, it does. Let's talk a little bit about mind maps. For those that don't know, a mind map is a visual representation. It's a way of note-taking. You started creating mind maps for sure at Bootcamp and drawing some of them and putting them on the computer. And then you got really good at them and you really started to develop them. Can you talk a little bit about what the mind maps meant for you?
Yeah, so I had from the start, I downloaded MindMeister as you guys had advised, and for me it was just easier and better. Otherwise, when I tried to do some by hand, I had to continue to shred those and remake another one when I ran out of room. But the mind mapping, so the mind mapping also developed for me was different at the beginning as it was at the end. So when I first started and before boot camp, I was mind mapping and it was taking me too long. And I'll tell you why, because I was taking the textbook and I was going, you know, paragraph by paragraph and pulling out something out of each paragraph. And if you do that with all those books, your mind maps are going to be tremendous. So then when I started with the photo reading, I said, this is silly. Why am I even though I'm photo reading, but now because of the mind maps, I'm still forcing myself to read through the text anyway. So what I had done towards the end, or I would say halfway through the second half of my studies, and it was very effective for me in time saving, and I think it was just better overall, is that I would photo read and then I would watch the lecture. And no, I'm sorry, I would photo read and then I would make just a basic outline on my mind map. So I would have contracts in the center, and then I would have whatever, I would go to the table of contents, and if there was 8 sections in the contracts, I would put 8 different bubbles around the side, 4 on each side. Then sometimes I would break that down a little bit lower, like one more level before I watched the video, but I began to plug into the mind maps during the lecture. So I was doing 2 things at the same time, and instead of putting into the mind maps things that I needed to memorize, for example, how many days for, do you have to oppose a motion or whatever it may be. I wasn't really worried with that stuff. I began to see things a little more generally and just try to grasp the ideas and understand it as opposed to memorize it, right? Just like you had told us.
Yeah.
And in doing that, I was able to listen to the lectures and pick something up that I heard you say in the lecture and say, oh, that's something I should know, and put it into the mind map. And they wound up being extensive anyway. But for me, I felt that it worked better that way. And I was watching the videos to do that. I was watching them at 1x speed because from my experience, you can't catch up by doing mind maps and watching the video at 1.5, 2 times.
No, you can't mind map and read. Yeah, you can't turn them up to double speed or triple speed in mind map.
I upgraded to multiple speeds after all my mind maps are done, and I went back and went through all the lectures, or at least the lectures that I needed more help on.
Good. And then you also used a tool called paraliminal recordings. Paraliminal recordings are different soundtracks in the left and right ear that are designed to remove particular barriers that you might have mentally and sort of speak to your non-conscious brain. We've curated a set of those. Was there any particular titles that you found particularly helpful for you?
I used to do the rest easy ones, or I
Sleep
forget the
easy,
names
yeah,
of
or
them.
sleep deeply and wake refreshed. Yeah.
Wake refreshed, right? With the memory supercharger, I would do after every photo reading, or not every photo reading session, but at the end of every photo reading day. So I kind of like those the most. I did not delve into all of them because I was happy with those and they were working. I did do some of the anxiety ones. That was good. What else did I do? I did. There was other ones like superchargers.
Yeah, there was a 10-minute supercharger just for
Yeah.
a quick boost of energy. Yeah.
I like those like after lunch or something like that, or after a meal. And I felt like, am I really going to study or am I just going to hang around? And I would put that in, and I mean, they work. It really works, and it also motivates me that there comes a point where, the first go when I did New York and New Jersey, I did a different bar review course, and both times the same one. And that was very boring in the sense that I was reading a lot. I was reading a lot, and my notes were becoming like law school outlines, 20, 30, 40 pages long. And I said, what's the point if I got to be flipping through all of this? But the point is that when I would do a paraliminal, for example, I felt that I was actually studying or I was doing something that was beneficial for the course, and it was, without having, with minimal effort, I guess, right? So I didn't waste any time, and that's what I liked about them, is that they were gap fillers for me. I did them religiously at night, the sleep ones and the wake up ones in the morning, before I closed my eyes and before I got out of bed in the morning, and the ones for the photo reading. But sometimes I would say, I'm drained today, don't want to sit down and do a mind map, I don't want to sit down and study. I would pop a paraliminal in 10 minutes, and 50% of the times I still felt, I'm not going to continue on. But sometimes it was the booster I needed, and it made me feel like, you know what? Like, I'm back in it now. Now I just did this for 10, 15 minutes. I might as well put an hour in and do something else. So it was good motivation for me. It was good to get me going again when I didn't feel like it.
Great. Now, the other part of boot camp that we haven't talked about is we did an essay writing workshop, and this was really an introduction to the essay writing form and the first chance for you to get some live instruction, certainly, and some direct instruction on your writing. I remember you struggling a bit.
That writing was the worst one there, I think.
Well, I don't know, it was the worst one, but it was not of the quality that you did on the bar exam. We'll put it that way. What was the process of learning how to write, and how valuable was boot camp to help you get some basis for that?
All right. So in law school and for my New York and New Jersey bar preps, I had done IRAC, right? Issue, rule, application, conclusion. That's how I had always written in school. Granted, I have been out of school for a while, but that's what I was used to doing. When you guys introduced to me the FLA format, I loved it. Firstly, organizationally, it's great. Building the skeleton before you start writing is something that we learned at Bootcamp or at the essay writing workshop during the Bootcamp. And that helped me a ton, as opposed to doing an outline, separate outline on scratch paper and then wasting time to go into the essays. Because if you remember, timing was a big issue for me for the essays. When you're in practice, in legal practice, I can sit here for 2-3 hours, if I please, to think about a motion or something, that I would have to draft. But on the bar exam, you're limited in time, and I wasn't used to writing under time constraints. I hadn't in a long time. So that's probably the biggest advantage I got from it, was building that skeleton and the FLA structure. Now, the FLA was good for me because when you start with the facts and only the relevant facts for that section that you're going to do of the skeleton, everything else flows, I remember on the exam, there was none of me going back to a previous paragraph, except for when I had a little time at the end just to review, but it flowed, it was just a much easier and much more time-friendly way to do it.
That's great. Now, as I said, you were not feeling great right before the exam, but you were pushing through. You got to Tampa. What was the experience of being in the Florida bar as an attorney? Now it's been 7+ years since you took a bar exam and you're down in Florida. What was that like for you?
Well, I mean, I'm not that old. I'm only 35 this year, but you could see I'm going gray already. But I did feel a little bit like the odd man out. And I know there's people who are doing it even older than I do and significantly older than I am doing it. But I did feel a little bit funny and a little bit out of place. Why? Because I saw a lot. Granted, I didn't take July, and from what I understand, July is even worse for that. But I got down to Tampa to the hotel. I stayed at the hotel that was attached to the convention center just to make it easy for me in the morning. And, you know, there was that hectic, you know, lots of groups of people sitting on the floor studying the last minute things. And I was a little overwhelmed with it. And I kind of felt like, did I do enough? Because maybe I should be more stressed out going into this exam today, you know. I saw in other people the way that I felt and must have seemed to others when I took the exam years ago. But this time I felt good about it. I really did. And yeah, that's what it was. I mean, Tampa's nice. I got there a day before so that I got a whole night's rest before having to wake up the next day. Actually, no, the exam was Tuesday and Wednesday, correct? I flew in on Sunday afternoon. So I slept on Sunday, test out the bed, make sure everything's going to be okay. Monday morning, and already for a week or two, like you had instructed us to do, I had been waking up 5:30, 6 in the morning to get on that schedule for the bar exam. And I went down, they were doing complimentary breakfast in the hotel. So I did a practice run, a dry run on Monday, exactly what I would have done for the exam. And I think that served me well too. And then by Tuesday, I was feeling already less anxiety about being there, you know.
Yeah, I think that's really great.
I mean, if for anybody who's taking it for the first time, I knew what to expect. And in New York at the Javits Center, there was a lot of people. So I knew what to expect with the crowds and everything. But, you know, it never fails to surprise me how crazy people can get over it, you know. I think calm is the way to go into it. It's the best way to go.
Yeah, I think having that calmness is really important. So you go through the
not
exam.
To cut you off, but just to bring it back, I also was doing my paraliminals in the morning before.
Okay.
And even on the breaks between the sessions, I would do them.
Oh, that's great. Okay. So the exam has got essays, Florida multiple choice, then the day of multi-state. As you're leaving the exam, what's your feeling at that point? How do you feel about it?
So Florida, the essays are the first day. And essays was my weakest point, you know that. And I came out of the morning session, which was the 3 essays, not feeling great. And I'll tell you why, because of the subject matter. So the first question was secure transactions. And I said, even though you told us it's going to be secure transactions, I still had my fingers crossed, hoping it wouldn't be. So I saw secure transactions, and I actually went to the next one. And I saw it was trusts. I just looked for 2 seconds just to see what the subject matter was. Also wasn't happy to see trusts, although you had told us you could almost, you know, your premonition was that we were going to see trust, and we did. And the third essay, also you were spot on, was personal injury. Sorry, what do we call it? Torts.
Torts.
So, and it was an injury question, and that's exactly right up my alley. That's what I do. So I start reading the question, and I realized a trip and fall in a supermarket, and then a car accident on the way home. And I said, jackpot, this is my question. So that one was easier for me than the other 2. But, you know, at the break, I felt a little nervous about the first 2 essays. But I'll tell you, FLA saved me, and making a skeleton beforehand saved me, because otherwise I probably would have been staring at the paper. Where do I start? What should I say? So when I broke down the coals of the question into a skeleton, I said, okay, now I just have to write a couple of facts here that fit in, a couple of sentences about arguments and, you know, the law and the application. And then it flowed, you know, even though I did not know the subject matter. I'm not going to lie. Did not know a lot of the subject matter that they were asking. Did not mention if it was equipment versus inventory versus whatever. And I know that that was the case. And, you know, I try to block out my ears on the way out, because you hear everybody saying, you know, I wrote this and I wrote that. And I said, oh, no, I didn't. So I don't know what to think of it. But I tried to relax. I went back to the room. Did not leave the room until it was time to go back. I didn't go for a walk. I did not want to see anybody. also as per your advice. So I stayed in the room. I took out a couple of mind maps for Florida multiple choice, and thank God I did, because I remember the last one, there were two of them that I looked at, was evidence and Florida procedure, and Florida procedure was one of the three on there, so I'm glad that I looked at that. That's when I picked up, I think, most of the time limitation questions, which is the only time you really see that on the exam, is on those multiple choice. But I felt good. I did a paraliminal. I washed my face. I had the day before packed in the room, left a bunch of bananas and some granola and stuff like that. So I ate something very light. I did not eat heavy the whole day. And even that the night before the second day, I did not eat heavy. And that's it. And then I went back the next day. I felt a lot more refreshed going into the MBE, but we knew that already. I knew I was stronger on the MBE. So that was okay. I wasn't too stressed that day. When it was all over, I was very happy just glad that it was over.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you've got about a 6-week wait to get results. And tell me a little bit about what results day was like for you.
Results day, I woke up, so I had scheduled my entire day to make sure I was not in court or anything like that. I had put some things off to other colleagues of mine. And I said, I want to be home in the morning, because I remember way back getting my notice for the New York bar that I had failed it the first time. And it was pretty miserable feeling. And this time I said, well, do I want to see it in the morning? Should I wait and look at it at night? Because it can either make this day much easier for me and better, or it's going to be a tough day for me to get through, But I decided, and my girlfriend had told me, I want to look at it with you. I said, okay, so we will. And there was a little hiccup this year, which I think is different from others, right? So all along we thought we were going to check the website, go to the website, and you had to download a PDF. And my number was like on, multiple pages down the PDF. And as I'm scrolling, I don't know if it was just me or my mindset, but not too many passes were jumping out at me.
No, there weren't many passes. Most people failed.
I was seeing a lot of F's instead of P's, and I'm like, oh boy, this is, I already started getting that pit in my stomach, and I said, relax, it is what it is. Finally got to it, and I was going to do something like cover it with an index card and do one thing at a time, and I said, whatever, just do it like pulling off a Band-Aid, I said. So I just looked at it, and I was pleasantly surprised. It was pass, pass, pass. And honestly, as we've already mentioned, I wasn't too strong in the essays. I was hoping for a fail, pass, pass, where my MBE was going to bring me up. I did do better on the MBE, but luckily I passed the Florida essays also. I couldn't believe it.
That's fantastic. And
yes.
For those of you who are not in Florida, the pass rate in Florida in February was horrific. Most people failed, and first-time takers, out-of-state attorneys, very low pass rates. So it's really an extraordinary accomplishment. You've got a practice to run. You've got family commitments. You've got your health that you're dealing with, and you're taking the bar exam and coming down here and doing it. And you passed, and there's a great picture of you kind of making a fist, a victory fist, as you see the score. So your girlfriend had to be really excited. I know she was part of this process and helping you out, right?
Yeah, so she, afterwards, I said, thank God, because I don't know if I could have done this again for July. And she said, I definitely couldn't have gone through this again for July. So, it affects the people around you too. Sometimes, some days when you're studying, you have those moody days where you feel like I'm never going to pass this. There's no way I'm going to get all this material in. But listen, stuck to the course, the syllabus as you gave it to us, and I was pleasantly surprised that it was more than enough.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm really pleased for you and proud of you. I know you worked super hard at this. We really enjoyed getting to know you at Bootcamp. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, and I knew you worked really hard then, and it was like, oh my God, all this stuff coming at you. And I remember you saying to me, I don't know, can I get this? Can I figure it out? I was like, yeah, you'll get it. And you did, and you worked through it really systematically, and it's a great result. So now you're going to be licensed in Florida, New Jersey, New York, so you'll be able to help out your family in South Florida, and you've got some options. It's got to feel pretty good right now.
It feels good. It feels even better this week as I'm wrapping things up here in New York, and I'm actually flying to Miami on Sunday. Monday at 1 p.m., keep your fingers crossed. I have a good meeting with at a real good firm that I would love to be at. And the partner of the firm called me and said, hey, I heard that, you know, you're an attorney licensed in New York and New Jersey, because I have some friends looking out for me down there too. And he said, come down and meet me. We maybe have a position that's opening right now. So I didn't know how soon I was going to make it down there, but apparently, you know, I don't want to jinx it, but
okay.
I'm getting some interest from some firms down there, and I'm happy to see that. You know,
That's great.
Still waiting for my admission, but I also got my application in late. One piece of advice I'll give to anybody who's looking to go to work as soon as you get out of it, send your application in as soon as possible, because it's in Florida, it's 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, it's a long process, really long process. Well, you know, one of the things that I do in these interviews is to embarrass everyone that's on the call. We know that when you're studying, you have your life on hold. And so once you pass, we think it's good to release it a little Dave Ramsey kind of phone call here, where we like to do a countdown 3, 2, 1. And I'm just going to ask you to just scream out, I have my life back. So if you're willing to play along with me, we're going to have this primal release here. I mean, I know you're in a law office and you got to behave yourself, but you know.
I got to keep it at a 5. We got people at both offices next to me.
I got that. So we'll do it at a 5 level. Okay. So I'm going to count down from 3. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
I got my life back.
Perfect. I love it, man. That is awesome. I am so pleased for you. And thanks so much for all that you've contributed. I know you're still on our Facebook group and you support our existing students. Appreciate that. And any other final comments or thoughts that you want to share with our audience today?
I just want to make it very clear that for me, the game changer was boot camp. Even though it's only 2.5 days, the game changer was boot camp, because before boot camp, I did not know what to do with all the tools that I had at my disposal. When I got back from boot camp, we do full days at boot camp. And so I came back with a strategy, right? I took everything that we did in boot camp, and from boot camp until the exam, every day or every study session was the way we did it in boot camp, even with this silly plastic orange on the head and everything, but it kept a good routine, you know? And that's really what locked it up for me. It really was. And you guys were great. As opposed to thanking me, I need to thank you, Kelly, June, Amanda, Evelyn, everybody there. Thanks so much. You guys were extremely supportive. And so I was pleasantly surprised. I've never had a bar review course where I thought that they cared, you know, and you guys really showed that you did. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. It's our pleasure. Great to be with you on the journey. Thank you for sharing your story with our audience. I know it's going to inspire and encourage a lot of people, and look forward to hearing great things and to seeing you in the Sunshine State in the very near future. So good luck with all of that. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks so much. And thank you to our audience. Appreciate you being with us. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. We'll be back again soon with our next interview. Bye-bye, everybody.